Okay, today is day 9 of making sourdough starters. I have 3 starters going here. Here's the white starter. It's got fermentation barely. It's very gluey. It's smelling pretty good. It's okay. It smells okay. Here's the hybrid starter. Very nice fermentation. Very filled with bubbles. Very nice looking. That's just beautiful. It's got a wonderful smell now. That's different than it has been. Here's the whole wheat starter. This is all whole wheat. And obviously it's very, very nice. Full of bubbles. Very beautiful. And it smells great. It always has. It smelled really good from the beginning. So day 9, and these 2 are doing wonderful. This one seems to be lagging behind. Look at that. Okay, the only difference is this one is plain white, unbleached gold medal flour. This one is a hybrid of white flour and whole wheat flour and water This one is 100% whole wheat, and I started it with the pineapple juice for the first 4 days, and after the first 4 days I started using water. Now I wanted to show you what a sourdough starter looks like. My sourdough starter that has been, I fed it last night and I fed it this morning because I'm going to be making bread today. I'm going to be mixing up some dough. This is just unbleached white flour, the same flour I was using for this sourdough starter. And that's really, really lovely. This is a finished starter that's been mature and doing well for 11 years now. This is my original sourdough starter, the Northwest sourdough starter that I actually started my whole business with. So you can see the difference between a nice mature starter and a starter that's young. These starters are doing well. I think they would do better if they were fed more often. So to finish off this particular experiment, we're going to go until day 14 and feed them only once a day, every 24 hours, because that is basically what most people do. And so I'm trying to replicate what most people do. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pour out half of each one and feed them again, and that's what we've been doing every day. Actually, yesterday we poured out a little more and I fed them more, so I think I will continue that. So I have about that much left. Most of it's gone. I remember that yesterday we were going to start feeding them more. They're just too gluey. They just are not getting enough food to last 24 hours. So we were feeding 40 grams of flour and 40 grams of water. I believe yesterday that we started feeding 60 grams of water and 60 grams of flour. So we'll continue that. We have 60 grams of flour. Grams of water. Now when I plan on building up my starter, because I'm going to be using it for baking bread the next day, it really depends upon what I'm planning to do. But since I don't keep a lot of starter going, I feed my starter and keep it at room temperature every day. But since I don't keep a lot of it, what I'll do is I'll just start building on it. So I'm encouraging more yeast and more bacteria. When I start to build for a bake, I don't always pour out, or I don't always discard some and then feed. Sometimes, since I'm not starting with a lot, I will just start feeding more. And that way I'm keeping the bacteria and the yeast both. We're keeping about that much. And now these are different because they're young sourdough starters. We're not using them. We're just feeding them and trying to make a great starter. Since this is a hybrid, we will use 30 grams of white flour, 30 grams of whole wheat flour, and then 60 grams of water. I still think the hybrid one would be the easiest for most people to get going. However, the whole wheat starter did really well. I'll have to admit that. Okay, so we have 60 grams of combined flour there. We'll do 60 grams of water. You could tell by this little experiment how when bakers online are talking about hydration and how it doesn't always tell you how a dough should feel. Well, the white sourdough starter is nice and thick like a pancake batter. However, it's just a little bit thinner than this mixture of whole wheat and white. And then the whole wheat starter, now it's thinner at this moment because it's fermented and it's broken down. The protease has broken down the gluten, so right now it's thinner, but we'll go ahead and pour out most of it. Keep about that much. And I will feed this starter 60 grams of whole wheat flour. And 60 grams of water. Now the whole wheat flour, since it absorbs more liquid, will be a thicker dough. So when you hear the sourdough bakers or any of the bakers talking about hydration and how a dough feels at 60% or 70% hydration or 80% hydration, and hydration just means how much water per weight is in the dough compared to the weight of the flour. For hydration, all of the percentages are based off the weight of the flour. Like if you have 100 grams of flour and you add 80 grams of water, you have 80% hydration dough. Anyway, this dough, they're all 100% hydration, but you can see that this dough is much thicker than this dough, and that one's thicker than this dough. So hydration is something that bakers use to help each other understand how much water is in a dough compared to the flour weight, but it doesn't always tell you what the dough should feel like. Different flours are different, and even several different whole wheat flours can absorb water differently. You might have 3 or 4 different whole wheat flours, and some of them don't absorb as well as others. So hydration just gives you a starting point, something to go by.